Сію, посивію, з Новим роком всіх вітаю, щоб вам весело жилося, щоб задумане збулося, щоб ніколи не хворіли, щоб нічого не боліло, щоб у праці все хорило та в кишені шелестіло, щоб, як квіти, відцвіли та 100 років прожили. I sow. I congratulate everyone on the new year, so that you live happily, so that your plans come true, so that you never get sick, so that nothing hurts, so that everything burns in your work and rustles in your pocket, so that, like flowers, you bloom and live 100 years.
Таджахал, ніхао, здравствуйте, привет, як там, hello, харате, салвей, welcome.
Coming home, jet lag, what's it like, and the cost of living between two countries. Folks, this is episode number 69 of the Language Log Podcast. My name is Steven. Let's get to it. Quick note before we start, if you're serious about improving your English or IELTS score, check out the resources linked in the description for this episode. Everything I talk about here comes from years of working with real students, seeing and hearing their struggles. They're built for real life, not textbooks. If you want structured tools instead of random advice and practical tips and techniques on what to do and what not to do, check out the links in the description for this episode. All right, let's get into it. All right, well, we begin episode number 69 of the Language Log Podcast. My name is Steven. Thank you very much for joining me. And this is the second time I'm recording this episode because the first time I tried to do it, I actually didn't really get all the way through it. I went to one of the local libraries in my hometown, and only after I misjudged how much time it was going to take me to set up and then shoot this episode. The result was that when I was nearing the end of the podcast recording, the library was also closing, so it became a little bit rushed. So I figured, well, instead of trying to rush through the ending, I would just re-record the episode, and that way maybe it'd be a little bit more cleaner overall. Another funny occurrence that happened at the library, quite coincidental, was that my niece was being tutored in the room next door. So at this library, they have 2 tutorial rooms, and I had booked one between like 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is when the library closes, but she was in the next tutorial room over being tutored in her English, of all things. So I knocked on the door, I said hello, and turns out this language tutor was an English tutor who is currently, I guess, working on her education degree at university and was helping my niece develop her English composition. And as a little bit of a test of this English teacher's skills, I asked her, so why is it that some verbs take an S and some verbs don't? To which she responded, well, some are plural, some are not. Like, no, that's not the question. The question is, for example, the verb to take. Why is it I take, you take, he, she takes, it takes? Why does the S all of a sudden appear? To which she responded, well, I'm not very good on the history of English. I'm like, I know. I agree. It's my weakness too. Grammar challenges aside, I was a little bit more surprised about how much she got paid per hour, and kind of made me think, am I undercharging for some of my services? Turns out, currently, in my hometown, in the center of Canada, an English tutor can charge about $90 per hour. Now, she works through an agency, and no doubt that if she worked on her own, maybe she could charge less, maybe she could charge more, but $90 an hour for English composition tutoring, I thought, like, wow, I mean, that is substantially more than it was when I remember living and working here before. But nowadays, I mean, $90, I guess, for an English tutor, private tutoring, yeah, I guess that's sort of the cost. I don't know. What do you think? Is that too much? Is that too low? Times by 5, that's 450 renminbi if you live in China, because I know a lot of people in China listen to this podcast. Tutoring aside, you might wonder, what's with the new intro, Steve? What language was that? Well, that was Ukrainian. That was a traditional Ukrainian poem that I remember from my childhood, that me, my brothers, and my sister, we would go around with my father New Year's Day at around 10 o'clock in the morning and recite this poem at the doorstep of my grandparents, my great aunts, my uncles, and we would have little jars of wheat that we would shake at the doorstep while saying this poem. And in reward, we would receive some money and probably chocolates as well. But this was a traditional poem that we used to say every New Year's Day. This version, or the version that you heard, isn't the exact version that we spoke. I remember my father giving us a different version, and I couldn't find it online. There are a few different versions of this poem, but it's something that since I've started this YouTube channel, I thought would be kind of a neat way to introduce or bring in the new year each and every year. And I've done it for the last couple of years. If you're looking to download the lyrics for this or the words, I do have a link in the show notes for this podcast episode that you can click on. It's a free document. You can download it. No email sign up required at all. And it will give you both the English and the Ukrainian for that poem. Now, given that it is January, you might be wondering, where am I these days? Where in the world are you, Steve? Are you in Canada? Are you in China? Or where are you? Well, I'm happy to say that I am back in Canada. I've been here for about a week, and it has been a bit of a challenge. Now, not only is my hometown extraordinarily cold these days, I've also been dealing with jet lag, and then also my mother has a cat, which I'm allergic to. It's actually one of the reasons why this episode is a little bit later than usual, because I've been dealing with sort of the fallout of transitioning from China into Canada. Now, if you're wondering, am I going back to China? Yes, full intentions to return, if not later in the month, then certainly in February, maybe around Chunjie or Spring Festival, maybe after. I'm not entirely sure, because right now I actually need to secure a new visa to return. Now, I could go back on a 10-day travel visa, but that's not enough, because usually you need a return ticket somewhere. Now, I thought, well, maybe this time I will be applying for a business visa, which requires an invitation from a company, and is something that I'll have to track down before applying. So this episode, I thought I would discuss a little bit about what it's like to sort of take that international flight from China to Canada, what it's like to deal with jet lag and sort of reintegrating back to the city that I grew up in, and what sort of is in store over the next couple of months, and possibly even later on this year. So how was the flight? Well, I'm happy to say it was completely uneventful. This trip, we departed Beijing. We were about a half hour late. We left at 8:30 p.m. Beijing time, and we flew overnight to Vancouver. Now, the thing is, when you fly from Beijing to Vancouver, you gain a day. So if I depart at 8:30, I arrive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Vancouver time. This is kind of neat. The problem with this flight, however, is that you have to gauge whether or not you should try to stay awake the entire time, or be okay with falling asleep for a couple hours and then trying to fall asleep again later on in Vancouver. Now, as it were happened, I couldn't stay awake. I think I watched 2 episodes of the TV show Succession, had dinner, and then after that, I was like, I can't stay awake anymore. It was 1 a.m. Beijing time by the time I fell asleep on the airplane. And I think I was zonked out until about, as it is on airplanes. I'm not sure how well you can sleep on airplanes, but for me, it's kind of one of those things where you kind of sleep, but you kind of don't sleep. You're aware you are trying to sleep, but you never fully hit that dream state. And not only that, if you don't have one of those neck pillows, then your head sort of flops down and you snap awake. Now, one thing I've tried to do, it's one of my travel hacks, is that I take the quilt, the cover, the sheet that they give you to wrap yourself up. And if you have 2 of them, you can actually wrap it around your neck, not too tightly, but if you have 2 of them, I've found that gives you a good, decent support of your neck. This is not the same as having a neck pillow, of course, but it's a cheaper alternative and a little bit more portable, in my opinion. Overall, the flight was uneventful. There was no turbulence. I think maybe there was turbulence 2 or 3 times, but not very much. Very smooth flying. And the great thing about flying into a city like Vancouver is that it's very picturesque, both on the on incoming and outgoing. Now, Vancouver sits on the western side of Canada, and on the western side of that city, you arrive from the ocean. So you have this very picturesque view of the downtown Vancouver area, and you have the water. And it's actually one of those approaches where you see the water and it's kind of getting closer, but then all of a sudden you see land, and then you're landed. It's a very quick descent, or it seems like it's a very quick descent anyway. But then also when you take off, sometimes you take off facing west, so that as you take off into the ocean, and then you have to circle around, and that gives you a nice view of Vancouver City one more time. But then as you're flying away east, away from Vancouver, like east towards Toronto and my hometown, of course, you get to fly over the snow-capped Rocky Mountains. And this is if there's a train trip that people say, or a drive that you're supposed to take in Canada, it's through the Rocky Mountains. Now, that is substantially more expensive than taking a flight over the Rocky Mountains. And to be fair, flying over the mountains is just as picturesque. Now, Vancouver, much like Beijing, doesn't get snow very often. Most of the snow falls outside of the city proper. And of course, the surroundings of Vancouver are famous for their skiing resorts. To tell you the truth, I don't think I've ever been skiing outside of Vancouver. Not a big ski fan. Just something that my family never did very much of. But driving through the mountainous area or flying over it, that's sort of your, like, wow, that picturesque postcard view of the city and of the natural scenery of Canada. Not only that, Vancouver Airport, very nice. I give it credit. It is one of the more homely airports in the world, not like Beijing Airport. Beijing Airport, I would say, is not a very homely airport at all. Same with, that goes for Chengdu, the Capital International, as well as Daxing Airport. They're kind of transactional. Vancouver, however, it's not such a problem to sit around waiting for your flight. It is, first of all, the airport is carpeted, which gives it a little bit more of a homely feel, a cozy feel. But not only that, they have a wide selection of restaurants and a lot of shops that you can go into to sort of waste your time or to take up the time. And there's lots of room to move around, and it's very well laid out as well. I particularly like Vancouver Airport because it makes re-entering Canada a little bit easier, even though I found it a little bit odd that the immigration officials were asking me, why am I coming back to Canada? I'm like, well, because I'm from here. What am I not supposed to say in this situation? Now, one thing I've mentioned before on the podcast, I think it was in last week in my description, my sort of hesitation in leaving or booking flights due to the sort of the commitment of the long haul flights, particularly from Beijing to Vancouver. Now, Vancouver to Winnipeg, my hometown, not such a big deal. And I sort of always use the laptop analogy or the laptop experiment. If you fly a short haul flight, Beijing to South Korea, Vancouver to Toronto, it's not such a big deal. If you forgot your laptop, in theory, you could get on the next flight and go back to get it and then fly back again if you need it in extreme circumstances. But on a flight like Beijing to Vancouver, once you're on the flight, if you've forgotten something at home, not only is it a long time to get to your destination, but when you're in your destination, the timing is all off. So simply trying to board another flight isn't always so easy. Nor would you probably want to tell you the truth. So it's always been a thought in the back of my mind when I'm booking a flight that I try to start packing before I even book the flight. I know this is terrible, and I'm probably the worst person to talk to about booking flights. I know a lot of people who like to book flights way before their departure, their intended departure, whereas for me, I tend to book them almost last minute. I've also found that flight tickets sort of level off at a certain point, and then with that, you can sort of gauge how much you're going to spend. On top of that, this flight from Beijing or from China to Canada was paid for by the university. So in this case, I wasn't too concerned about the cost because I knew I was going to be reimbursed. Now, if it was my own money, maybe I would be booking a ticket a little bit more in advance. But as I mentioned before, this change up of visas, I'm not sure when the visa will be issued or given to me. So right now, I don't have any return ticket to China just yet because I do need to know the status of the visa before booking that flight. Now, laptop theories aside, international long-haul flights aside, the other thing that you have to deal with once you land and you stay wherever you are is jet lag. I will say, no matter how many different travel hacks you try, or who you listen to, or however much traveling you've done, there are times when you can deal with jet lag, and then other times where you just can't. As I've mentioned before, my hometown is kind of cold these days, but then also my mother has a cat that I'm sort of reacting to. So combining that with the change of time zones has presented a bit of a challenge this time. Not only that, I will point out, if you are a drinker, this makes jet lag worse. Jet lag has a lot to do with not just your sleep, but your hydration or your dehydration. So if you are able to keep your body hydrated and stay away from things like alcohol, coffee as well, but mostly alcohol, then your body should be able to acclimatize itself to your local destination a lot easier than if you were to have a beer or two even on the flight. So I would say that if you're going to fly internationally, just think about the cost of that free beer or that free glass of wine that you have on the flight. It might not just help you to go to sleep right now, but there might be sort of a knock-on effect later on as you're trying to adapt to jet lag. But hey, to each their own, do what you got to do. If you need to have a drink to ease or quell the nerves on your flights, then I guess you got to deal with the situation that you feel best to do. To say nothing of the cost. I mean, of course, you did pay for the ticket, and if it's free alcohol, and as long as you're not causing a ruckus, I mean, I guess why not, right? But jet lag, this is something that you have to deal with that is very difficult. And again, no matter how many different travel hacks I've tried, it's just something that is either good or bad. And I will say that this time has probably been the worst jet lag I've had in a very long time. In my experience, I have seen that my jet lag takes about 7 to 10 days to get over. And generally it moves by about maybe about half hour to an hour each and every day. Although this is not consistent. This also has to deal a lot with when or how you can push off going to sleep. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that if you feel tired at 4 p.m. and the common thought is like, oh, I feel tired, I'm going to lie down for 20 minutes. Don't do it. If you can push that feeling off, resist the temptation to go lie down for a nap, then I think you might be better at dealing with your jet lag, because basically what's going to happen, you're not going to lie down for 20 minutes. As soon as you put your head down on that pillow, you're going to feel so comfortable. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, this is so nice. Oh goodness, this pillow, even if it's a rock, you'll be like, this pillow is so gorgeous. This is so comfortable. And you will fall asleep. You will lie down for 20 minutes, and 3 hours later, you will wake up. Not only that, when you wake up, you will feel more refreshed, and so you won't be able to get back to bed. Now, this is especially a problem if you wake up at 9 p.m. So you're up at 9 p.m., everybody else is going to sleep, and you're like wide awake. You're wired. What do? Well, I mean, I guess you could go for a run, but as I mentioned, my hometown's kind of cold right now. Canada's kind of cold. Kind of difficult to make this work. Not only that, if you haven't prearranged your gym workouts or other sort of arrangements, your living arrangements, waking up at 9:30 p.m. is almost kind of useless in some regards. Now, if you try to get beyond that, if you try to push through with that, one thing I've tried before, and this is not health advice, but I've noticed that zinc supplements kind of help in this situation. Zinc kind of plays the same role as melatonin or valerian root. Not that I would say that you should depend on these things, but same with like sleeping pills. I try to stay away from sleeping pills and tend towards zinc because the body sort of needs it more than it needs sleeping pills. And it's also natural, but it comes in very small doses. It's not a complete fix-all. It doesn't help you fall asleep right away, and it's not meant to knock you out for 8 hours. But I have noticed that if I do take a zinc tablet, I'm able to fall asleep, and I can get at least a couple hours rest. One of the issues, however, is that when you fall asleep, or when you're trying to fall asleep, if you don't take zinc tablets or sleeping pills, is that you kind of lie awake, or you lie there in this kind of awareness state where you are trying to fall asleep, and you know that you're trying to fall asleep. And then even worse, you get anxious about not being able to fall asleep because you're going to be like, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to be so tired tomorrow. I don't want to have the panda eyes or the dark eye circles under your eyes. You're thinking like, I'll go to sleep. I need to go to sleep. You need to go to sleep. Count the sheep, count the cars, count the camels or whatever it is that you're counting to try to get to bed. But it doesn't always work. And so you end up sitting there and you never know what time it is. And sometimes, you might get up and check your cell phone. Oh, it's 1:30 a.m. Then you lie there and it feels like it's only half an hour, but then you check again, it's like 3:30, like, oh, but it doesn't feel like it's been 2 hours. I've been kind of rolling around and not really sleeping, but kind of resting, and you're not really able to do anything else during the night. Now, one thing I've tried to do in all my travels, and this is sort of another travel hack, is to try to get up at the same time, no matter when you go to bed. And this helps in sort of keeping your routine. So right now, I'm trying to get up at 5:45 a.m., which sounds very early. 6 a.m., even 6:30 a.m. would be fine. But if you start trying to get up at or letting yourself sleep until 7:30 a.m., 8 or 9 a.m., it will push off the time that you're able to fall asleep later on. This is compounded if you drink coffee or energy drinks. So trying to deal with jet lag, try to get up at the same time. I realize I'm saying try to get up at the same time. If you normally get up at 8 a.m., okay, but I would also maybe say, why don't you try to get up at 6 a.m.? Go for a run or something. No one's going to take that advice. So trying to get up each and every day at the same time, 5:45, 6 a.m., no matter what time you go to bed, putting your alarm on and then trying to get up at that time, I've found sort of helps set your body and set the routines, if only gives you a daily routine to follow. Now, one other thing you could try to do, in addition to avoiding alcohol, trying to stay up past that 20-minute nap temptation, getting up at the same time. Also, you can try to go to the gym. Now, this can be a little bit difficult because it becomes a logistical sort of nightmare. Going to the gym sounds like a good idea, but then you kind of have to realize the knock-on effects of this as well. You have gym clothes, you need to find the gym, it's an extra cost, and not to mention that you have to go there and then come back, all of which takes time. If you're only in town for a couple of days, this might not be an ideal situation. Even going for a run outside might not always work, whether it's raining outside, cold outside, or simply you're going, I don't even have the proper shoes. So it is a good idea to go to the gym. I have found that it does help. But even in saying that, I understand that there are sort of peripheral issues with going to the gym that seem minor, but when you try to deal with them on your own, it becomes a little bit more anxiety inducing, if anything. So going for a run, lifting weights, even if you aren't able to hit your PRs or hit your typical gym workout, getting the blood moving around, stretching as well. This does help with the jet lag, but it won't necessarily fix it because, again, your body will take time. It will need time to adjust to its new time zone. And I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled to a lot of places. I've only not been to South America, Africa, and Antarctica. In all my travels, dealing with jet lag is always hit or miss. Now, once you're done with your jet lag or still in the process of dealing with it, this is when you can start enjoying where you are. That is, your body start acclimatizing, you're adapting to the new time zone. But the next issue you're going to have to deal with is gaining weight. I don't think I'm alone in the situation. When I return home to Winnipeg, to Canada, I have noticed that I typically gain weight. Now, this might be because of a couple things. One, my eating sort of gets knocked off its normal routine. Number two, I might not be working out as much. But number three, I think it is because I do indulge quite a bit in the things that I can't get overseas, whether it's in Beijing or wherever else I'm traveling to. For example, Tim Hortons. This is probably the best example between life in China and life in Canada. I don't often go to Tim Hortons or Tim's Cafe in China, not least of all because I can make coffee at home, but also I'm a little bit disappointed by their food offerings. However, in Canada, I'm not disappointed by their food offerings, particularly their donuts. I think I've talked about this before. The sour cream glazed donuts at Tim Hortons are fantastic. Their chocolate donuts, fantastic. They have lots of donuts. But not only the donuts, they have good sandwiches as well. If you are in China and you go to a Tim's Cafe, try the Montreal smoked sandwich. That is probably the closest type of sandwich that they have here in Canada. All the other ones that they have are very particular to China, and I've never seen them in Canada. Not only that, Tim's Cafe in China doesn't have donuts. They used to when they started, but then they phased them out. However, if you go to a Tim Hortons in Canada, not only do you have lots of sandwiches, you have a very big selection of donuts to choose from. Now, donuts are just one thing, but also the availability of certain other treats. Chocolate comes to mind, different cereals, different snack foods, potato chips, a huge problem when I come back to Canada. I mean, China does have potato chips. A lot of them are imported, but even I don't eat the Chinese versions of things like the cucumber or the hot peppers or things like that, or the seaweed version of potato chips. Not a very big fan. But I come back to Canada, and there are a few flavors that, honestly, I'd like to try each and every time, if only to see if they're still the same. Number 1, all dressed. Number 2, salt and vinegar. Number 3, dill pickle. Those are flavors that you generally can't get anywhere else in the world. I know, silly, unhealthy, but very tasty. It's also these same treats that can often lead to gaining weight or taking weight with you when you go back. For me in particular, when I go back to China or when I go back to wherever I'm living, generally the two things that I take the most of are books and chocolate. You can't really take potato chips because they get crushed along the way. Not a bad thing, but chocolate doesn't get crushed as easily. This means that when you are going back, or when I'm going back to China, the suitcase that I'm taking is literally full of calories. That is, I mean, the books aren't so much calories, but all the treats that I'd be taking with me, you could calculate how many calories there are. And I mean, it's nice to think that I'm going to ration these things over the next 2 or 3 months, but let's face it, if you leave them for 3 months, they might not taste as good. So you have to consume them faster, which is a bad idea, and also means that you're going to put on that weight a whole lot faster. Now, given the ubiquity of online shopping, and especially in China, there are quite a few outlets like Taobao or Jingdong where you can order international foods either through import or export companies. But this also comes down to availability, like what is actually available, and then the price that you pay. For example, when you come back to your hometown, whether it's Canada or around the world, you're going to be able to walk to the convenience store and not only see a very large selection of things that you probably can't get wherever you're living, but you're also going to see the deals. And I'm talking about like the 2-for-1 or buy 2, get 1 free. These aren't really good deals, especially if you're trying to stay away from this type of junk food. But let's face it, you can buy a chocolate bar on Taobao for, 15 renminbi, that's $3. Or you come back to Canada and now you can buy 3 chocolate bars for the same price. It's things like this that you kind of, you go to the store, you come back and you're like, oh, well, it's such a deal. Now I can get more for less money, or I can get more for the same amount of money. I better stock up. Again, going back to that suitcase full of calories, that's what's happening. But what are you supposed to do? I mean, how often do you go back to your hometown? How long do you stay? I guess another way that you can sort of deal with this is just to eat as much as you can when you're in your hometown and then get your fill so you don't feel the need to keep on or to bring it with you. But good luck with that. That seems like not a good idea either. It's not just the treat food either. I mean, if you have a family that likes to get together as well, that's always a situation where you'll probably be trying foods that you can't get very often. They'll ask you like, well, what do you want to eat? And it's like, well, I don't really want to eat Chinese food anymore. Although I will say it's fun to try Chinese food in Canada because you just want to check what's the quality like. But in addition to that, you're kind of like, well, if we can have pizza from this particular place, let's try to have pizza from there, or fried chicken from over there. I mean, fried chicken in China is a little bit different than fried chicken in Canada. And again, it's one of the things that the families that you're seeing or the people that you're seeing, they might not eat like that all the time, but they're willing to eat like that because you are there and you're like, you sort of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's go out, let's get together, and let's go have something that, that brings us back to when we were younger. So even though they're willing to eat it with you, it doesn't mean that they're eating this each and every day. I would almost say that this is very similar to the freshman 15. I think a lot of university students experience that. And usually people, when they're changing new jobs or to a new environment, it's sort of that they want to try so many things, and the new schedule kind of prevents them from continuing on with their old routine, whether it's their old training habits, their physical exercise, or simply their old eating habits. In a new environment, you want to try a lot of different things. You want to see what's available, what what your body agrees with, what it doesn't, and what sort of new routine you can build wherever you're living. So is it a big deal if you gain weight when you go home? I think it's like par for the course. So jet lag and junk food aside, what is next in this grand adventure? Well, as it stands, I've mentioned before, I am looking to get a business visa for China. And the reason why is because I think it's a little bit easier to get than a work visa. Not only that, it will allow me to do some research, some investigation into some other ideas that I have about living in China long term. For the next year or so, I actually foresee myself living or moving between Canada and China a few times. This might change. The one issue that I have coming up is that my passport expires in 2027. This means that any business visa that I get won't be given more than a year. If I apply now, January or February 2026, chances are at most they will give me a 1-year business visa, even if it's multiple entry. So this adds one issue to the whole business application. If I had a work visa, it would be an issue as well. But given that I'm thinking if I were to return to teaching, then I wouldn't start until September 2026. And if they gave me a 1-year contract, even then the visa would expire before my passport expires next year. So it is a bit of an added complication, something that I have to be aware of, and also something that if the immigration authorities sort of ask, like, what are you planning on doing? This is something that I'm going to have to say, well, given that my passport is going to expire next year, I'd like a 1-year visa or a 1-year business visa right now to do some research. And then given the circumstances, possibly come back to Canada and renew my visa there. As it stands, I don't have a ticket back to China. And as I mentioned before, this ticket, like one of the reasons I had to leave or I needed to leave China, not just because the visa was expiring, but because the flight was paid for by the university. The next ticket, however, is probably going to be paid for by me. Now, again, this is one of these things that I'm thinking between China and Canada, if I work between those two places, how do I make it financially viable to do? On a business visa, you're not allowed to work. I know some people try to do this. I think it's very dicey. I think it's very sketchy. It is illegal. So on a business visa, an M visa, I'm not allowed to teach English on it, which is fine. Now, whether or not I'm allowed to teach English online is a different question. I think it's probably a gray zone. To be sure, I wouldn't be teaching online for a Chinese company. I'd be teaching online to students around the world. The purpose of the business visa, of course, is to be looking into business or doing business with Chinese companies, not making money in the country and ostensibly avoiding taxes. But this is something I'm going to have to look at and sort of be aware of when I'm transitioning between Canada and China. How do I make it financially viable to be living between these two countries? And how do I make it so that I can work online as well? Quick note before we continue, folks. If you're serious about improving your English or your IELTS score, I work directly with students who want clear structure, honest feedback, and practical guidance, not textbook theory. Everything I teach comes from years of working with real learners and seeing exactly where things break down. So if you're tired of guessing what to study and want someone to guide the process, check the link in the description and see if working together makes sense. Whether it's speaking, reading, listening, writing, or even just conversation practice, we'll break down what's holding you back and build a clear path forward together. Once again, check the link in the description and see if it makes sense for us to work together. All right, with that, let's get back to it. So as it stands, 4 to 6 weeks, that's what I'm looking for to be outside of China. And then after that, come back to China for a couple months and then back to Canada again, hopefully when the weather is a little bit warmer in the summer. But this brings up a good question. How long do you go home for? Go home for 10 days? Is that enough? A month? 3 months? Is that too much? When do you start getting tired of your hometown? When do you start realizing why you left your hometown in the first place? And possibly even more importantly, when do people start getting tired of you? And finally, what do you take back with you from your hometown? Is it food? Is it books? Is it electronics? Is it something else that you can't get wherever you're living right now? And how much of it do you take with you? We're living in a pretty globalized world, practically wanting for nothing. But what is it that you need from your hometown that you can't get anywhere else? send me an email. I'd be interested in knowing. And with that, folks, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. Comments, concerns, questions, or suggestions, do get in touch. The contact information is available in the show notes for this episode. If you need any help with your English or your Chinese studies, do get in touch. And if we can't help you, then we'll at least try to point you in the right direction. Sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We send it out a couple times each and every week, full of tips and tricks on how to approach your language studies, whether it's for English, Chinese, or something else, or even just general study habits. And lastly, if you're not a subscriber already to our YouTube channel, at Stevens Language Vlog, head on over to YouTube and subscribe today. Lots of videos and examples of what it's like to live overseas, learning languages, and living languages away from home. Thanks again, folks. We'll do this again. Have a good one. Stay warm out there. Bye-bye.